markets are crashing around the world for the second day in a row. The consensus is that the president's tariffs were much higher than expected and based on economic formulas that people do not understand. What is your reaction and what is the impact on Europeans? You want them to spend more on defense,
yes,
which they're agreeing to finally, but how can they do that when their economies are crashing and they are now
No, their economies are not crashing. The markets are reacting. No, their economies are not crashing. Their markets are reacting to a dramatic change in the global order in terms of trade. And so what happens is pretty straightforward. If you're a company and you make a bunch of your products in China, and all of a sudden shareholders or people that play the stock market realize that it's going to cost a lot more to produce in China, your stock is going to go down. But ultimately, the markets, as long as they know what the rules are going to be moving forward, and as long as that's set and you can sustain where you're going to be, the markets will adjust. Businesses around the world, including in trade and global trade, they just need to know what the rules are. Once they know what the rules are, they will adjust to those rules. So I don't think it's fair to say economies are crashing. Markets are crashing because markets are based on the stock value of companies who today are embedded in modes of production that are bad for the United States. We have to be a country that thinks we're the largest consumer market in the world, and yet the only thing we export is services. And we need to stop that. We need to get back to a time where we're a country that can make things, and to do that we have to reset the global order of trade.
And the other part of my question.
Well, the worst thing is to leave it the way it is forever. I mean, this just can't continue. We can't continue to be a country that doesn't make things. We have to be able to make things to provide jobs for Americans. That's it. It's that simple. China is an example. I mean, it's outrageous. I mean, they don't consume anything. All they do is export and flood and distort markets, in addition to all the tariffs and barriers they put in place. So the president rightly has concluded that the current status of global trade is bad for America and good for a bunch of other people, and he's going to reset it, and he's absolutely right to do it.
Let me ask you about also the predictability of relationships with allies. The Prime Minister of Greenland, the Prime Minister of Denmark, which at this point owns Greenland, so Denmark, a NATO ally, is saying that it's unacceptable that one country cannot annex another country.
Well, no one's annexed anything. It's going to be up to Greenlanders. The Vice President made that clear. He's going to respect the self-determination of Greenlanders. So at some point, the Greenlanders have made clear that they want to be independent of Denmark. So that's Denmark should focus on the fact that the Greenlanders don't want to be a part of Denmark. That's what they should focus on. We didn't give them that idea. They've been talking about that for a long time. Whenever they make that decision, they'll make that decision. And then what we're not going to do is let China come in now and say, offer them a bunch of money and become, dependent on China.
The president said he would not rule out using military force against Denmark, a NATO ally.
No, he said he would not rule out. No. He said he would not rule out. He said, I'm not going to rule out anything if Greenland is encroached upon by a foreign power like a China or Russia or anybody else. But it doesn't matter, because Greenlanders are going to make a decision. They're the ones that want to get away from Denmark. They're the ones that want to be independent. Not us. We didn't come up with that idea. They did. And if they make that decision, then the United States would stand ready, potentially, to step in and say, okay, we can create a partnership with you. We're not at that stage. But that's what the Vice President made clear last week in his visit there. His statement was very abundantly clear, that we will respect the self-determination of the people of Greenland. The people of Greenland. And they're the ones that want to leave Denmark. That wasn't our idea.
All right, well, second question here. Missy from Washington Post.
Mr. Secretary, I'd like to ask you about the Russia-Ukraine negotiations. Can you give us tell us about the American assessment of the conditions that Russia put forward regarding the Black Sea ceasefire talks, and also the British and French foreign ministers said this morning that Putin was dragging his feet. Do you agree with that?
Maybe. I mean, he might be. We don't know yet. We're going to find out fairly soon. I mean, look, here's what the president wanted to do. He wants to end this war, and he wanted to test it very early in his administration. Is it possible to end this war on terms that are acceptable, obviously, to both sides? Because you can't end a war unless both sides agree. And that's what we're in the process of finding out. We will know soon enough, in a matter of weeks, not months, whether Russia is serious about peace or not. I hope they are. It would be good for the world if that war ended. But obviously we have to test that proposition. So we're working through that process. We had a visitor, Mr. Kirill, was here this week. Had a chance to sit down with him. He met with others. He'll take some messages back, and the message is the United States needs to know whether you're serious or not about peace. Ultimately, Putin will have to make that decision. The Russian Federation will have to make that decision. I think the Ukrainians have shown a willingness to enter, for example, into a complete ceasefire to create space for negotiation. At some point here fairly soon, not 6 months from now, you know, the Russians and Putin will have to make a decision about whether they're serious for peace or not, and I hope they are serious. It would be good for the world if that
And
war
what is,
ended.
what is your assessment of the Russian conditions that were put forward? And also, Dmitriev said, following his talks with Mr. Witkoff yesterday, that the U.S. and Russia might resume direct flights as maybe a confidence-building measure. Do you support that? So that
I haven't heard anything about direct flights. I
What
can tell
about-
you, but I don't know who's going to fly on it because all these people are sanctioned. But I would just tell you that the thing I would point to you is this. We're going to wait and see. The Russians know our position in terms of wanting to end the war, and we will know from their answers very soon whether they are serious about proceeding with real peace or whether this is a delay tactic. It's a delay tactic. The president's not interested in that. If this is dragging things out, President Trump's not going to fall into the trap of endless negotiations about negotiations. We will know soon enough whether or not Russia's serious about peace. If they are, that'll be great. Then we can move towards peace. If they're not, then we'll have to reevaluate where we stand and what we do moving forward about it. But we'll be in no different a position than we are today, or we were when he took office. He wanted to know early in his administration, is peace possible? We're testing to see if the Russians are interested in peace. Their actions, not their words, their actions will determine whether they're serious or not. And we intend to find that out sooner rather than later.
And what about their conditions?
Which conditions?
They put forward additional conditions after you guys had the Black Sea ceasefire.
Yeah, so again, I mean, this is part of the back and forth of these sorts of things. I've had phone calls with foreign leaders, and then I read the readout, and it's like, oh, we said, no, you never, they came, they said something to me they never said. I guess that's part of the game in this place or whatever. But look, bottom line is, to me, at the end of the day, what's going to matter here is whether we're going to move towards peace or not. If peace is real, we will know soon enough. If they're not interested in peace, we will know soon enough. And we'll make decisions on the basis. I hope they are real. There are some promising signs, there are some troubling signs. It's not going to be easy. No one ever said this would be easy. But we're going to find out sooner rather than later. And let's just say I'm hopeful. I remain hopeful. I need to be hopeful that peace is possible and that the Russians are serious about peace. We want them to be serious about peace. And hopefully they are, but we'll know sooner rather than later.
Daphne Reuters.
Hi, sorry, I'm back here.
Your last name's Reuters? Oh, that's pretty cool, isn't it? Go ahead.
On the 5% defense spending target, have you received pushback to this idea while you've been here this week? And you mentioned yesterday up to 5% was your language. What do you mean by up to 5%?
Well, I said up to a path getting up to 5% at some point. I'm not saying overnight, but to get to that point. We think that's what NATO allies need to be spending for NATO to face the threats that it itself has identified and articulated. Here's the good news. The good news is everyone generally, with a couple exceptions, are spending more on defense today than they were 3, 4, 5 years ago. That's positive. That trend needs to continue. So the trend lines are good, but they need to continue. But this is not about spending. Okay, this is not about money necessarily. This is about capability. In order for NATO to be stronger, it needs partners that are stronger. Okay, the United States commits a lot to NATO and continues to. We are as involved in NATO today as we have ever been. And we intend to continue to be. But it has to be a real alliance. And that means that our alliance partners have to increase their own capabilities. So hopefully two things have led to that. The first is the war in Ukraine, I think, has woken up a lot of people on the continent about real threats and real war. And the other is, I think, the pressure and the statements of President Trump that have been pretty consistent about increasing their spending. So this whole trajectory of more defense spending began, I believe, back in 2017, 2018, under President Trump's first term. We want that trend to continue. And we're hoping when the leaders meet in The Hague that there'll be further and firmer commitments in that direction. I think it's beneficial to the alliance. The stronger our partners in NATO are, the more capable our partners in NATO are, the stronger NATO is. And everybody should be in favor of that.
And sorry, just to follow up, so will you try and get the official target as 5% rather than 2%, and will the U.S. commit to 5%?
Sure, we're heading there now. We're going to have to spend more on national security because we have a global footprint. And that's the point that I think has been made and missed in a lot of places. Okay, the United States has Indo-Pacific alliance obligations as well that we've made. We are currently involved in opening up the Red Sea so that global shipping for everyone, including our European partners, can become possible again. We're engaged in counter-drug and counter-gang interdictions in the Western Hemisphere. There's obviously all sorts of issues going on in different parts of the world, including we're concerned about a resurgence of terrorist cells, whether it's in Africa or in the Middle East. So the U.S. has these global obligations, and we have China that's undergoing the largest, most expansive peacetime military expansion in history. So we need to confront all of these things, and we're engaged in all of those things. So we're going to have to increase defense spending in our country. I think our commitment to NATO isn't just 3-something% spending of GDP. It's sustained over an extraordinary period of time, and that continues. So, look, I think our partners know they need to do more. They've all indicated they want to do more. They've begun to do more, and that trend needs to continue.